Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We're going to call this meeting of the Audit Committee to order, January 11th, 2022. We are happy to welcome our newest member of the board, our outside expert, Mr. Monk. So, Mr. Monk, thank you for your willingness to do this. We are very much looking forward to your expertise and adding value to this committee.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Good. With that, if you're interested in speaking on any of our items today, there's a little card that you can fill out and hand to the clerk, Ms. Kessler, right here. And then when it comes time for public comment, she will call folks up in the order that they submitted those. And of course, we'll also be using the services of, I believe, Adam today. Do we have you, Adam? No? Oh, in Zoom. Okay, very good. So we'll explain that when we get to it. All right, so the first order of business is adoption of our agenda. Is there a second? Motion and second that we adopt our agenda. Speaking to the adoption of the agenda?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Poe, Commissioners, and welcome, Member Monk. It's great to have you on the Audit Committee to bring your expertise. With respect to the adoption of the agenda, I'm concerned that this meeting was not posted along with the agenda on the clerk's agenda meeting page. I emailed the clerk yesterday at 6:38 p.m. She was out sick. I wished her the best for speedy recovery. Betsy subsequently contacted me and asked whether I had clicked on 2022, which is obvious because it wasn't there, which is why I sent the email. But as of last night, the agenda wasn't even printed until late in the afternoon on the 10th, yesterday. So again, I think it's inappropriate in light of the gravity of this meeting and the subject matter that it pertains thereto, particularly with the participation of the state auditor, that this information, this important information, was not made available to the public along with posting notice of the meeting. It was on the notice of meetings site, not the agenda, but where most people normally look, wasn't to be found until last night. Along with the UAB was also a concern, and that agenda wasn't even printed until 9:30 or something last night. So this is an ongoing problem where I don't want to cast aspersions, but it clearly seems like this commission suppresses posting the agendas and noticing of meetings that otherwise would prevent public participation on sensitive items that are not becoming to the commission. I mean, what we're going to discuss here today is not a good reflection whatsoever on the failed governance and mismanagement of the city. And I commend the auditor for trying to fix that, but we got to do a better job of civic engagement, Mayor Poe, and making sure that you guys are, as leaders who set policy, are making sure that things are posted for public review prior to the meeting in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to adoption of our agenda? Mr. Bigby, Ms. Bigby, did you want to comment on that? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ariola and Committee Member Monk. I need to take the hit for that, for the agenda. We've never been late on our agenda before, but we had some extenuating circumstances with our two audit reports and with the Auditor General report, and they actually weren't ready until yesterday. And we have full audit committees coming up later in the year, so we wanted to keep the meeting, but all we can do is say, assure you that all of our remaining audit committee agendas will be a week in advance like we have been doing for the last 2 years. So I apologize to our neighbors and to the commission.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, all in favor of the motion to adopt our agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Next item is approval of the minutes from the November 30th meeting. Were there any additions, corrections, or is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion and second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. So, Ms. Bigby, our first item for discussion is the long-awaited report from the Auditor General's office. I know that we've been working with their office for about 1.5 years now, and working feverishly over the last several weeks to get their draft report, get management comments back, and get this final report. So we want to thank them for all of their participation and their helpful analysis and recommendations. And it will be our job now over the next several months and in fact years to start our implementation plan and follow up with them on the progress of those. So with that, I will turn it over to you to introduce the team from the Auditor General's office and go through this report.
Thank you, Mayor, Audit Committee members. I'd like to introduce Derek Noonan, who is the Audit Manager with the Florida Auditor General. Derek has been working in local government audits since May 2014 and is responsible for supervising local government activities of the Auditor General, including audits of local governments. He reviews local government, district school board, and charter school audit reports, and rules for the conduct of local government and charter school audits. Prior to May 2014, Derek worked as an audit coordinator for district, school board, federal single audits for 9 years and has been employed by the Auditor General for a total of 25 years. Derek graduated from Florida Atlantic University with an MBA and is a member of the Florida Government Finance Officers Association. And before we turn it over to Derek, I'd like to also introduce Stephanie Johnson, who I think has worked with management. Stephanie Johnson is an audit coordinator with the Florida Auditor General. Stephanie works out of the Delray Beach office performing audits for educational entities as well as local government audits. And she has worked for the Auditor General for 21 years. Now I'd like to turn it over to the virtual meeting where Mr. Noonan and Ms. Johnson will be presenting.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Noonan, welcome. Ms. Johnson, good to see you both again.
Hello. I think Derek is still muted. I think he needs to be.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Okay. Oh, there I sort of. All right, never mind. Close enough. Okay, so there should be a slideshow out there somewhere. Yes, no?
We can see your
There we
screen.
go. Yep. Okay. So, all right. Yeah, first slide is just, the cover slide. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just kind of just go over some brief summaries of what the findings were and then turn it back over to the committee. So the first three findings had to do with Gainesville Regional Utilities, GRU, financial condition, and payments for general government services. So the first finding is just that GRU debt levels are significantly higher than comparable municipal utilities. The second is that the city had not established a reasonable and consistent methodology for determining the amount of the annual transfer from the GRU to the city's general fund. That's abbreviated internally as the GFT, General Fund Transfer, considering the GRU's long-term ability to pay. City indirect cost allocation procedures did not provide for an independent review of the indirect cost worksheet or a reconciliation of recovered indirect costs to actual indirect costs after the completion of each fiscal year. As a result, there were some years where the city overcharged indirect costs to the GRU. Okay. The next group of findings had to do with the Reichert House Youth Academy. That's the RHYA program and related organizations. The city did not effectively oversee or control the RHYA program operations. The city did not of record assess it was economically or otherwise advantageous for the city to use the nonprofit entity Reichert House Inc. to support the program operations, and that use of this entity resulted in less accountability and transparency of the program operations. The city did not effectively oversee Reichert House Inc. operations. Just to clarify, there could be a little confusion here because there's the Reichert House Youth Academy program within the police department, and then you have Reichert House Inc., which is a completely separate not-for-profit organization. So when you're talking about Reichert House program versus Reichert House Inc., those are two completely different things. Reichert House Inc. and the Reichert House Youth Academy program operations lacked appropriate transparency. And finally, city records did not demonstrate authorization for or the necessity of using the services of certain other nonprofit organizations in lieu of the services of city personnel for soliciting, receiving, and dispersing grantor and donor funds for the program, resulting in diminished transparency and accountability for those resources. Okay, that brings us to the next slide, which just has to do with administration, miscellaneous administration and management. So there's a couple slides on that. So findings 9 and 10 had to deal with the lack of city personnel knowledge and capability, rather, for compiling financial statements that comply with generally accepted accounting principles for the 2017-18 and 2018-19 fiscal years that resulted in additional costs for assistance in preparing the city's financial statements. And there were also audit findings considered by the city, not the city's auditor, but the city's independent CPA firm that does the city audit, to be in significant deficiencies and material weaknesses in the city's internal controls over financial reporting. GRU asked us to clarify that this finding did not apply to the standalone GRU financial statements, which are separately audited but then included in the city's overall financial statement audit. City records, including city-approved resolutions adopting budgets for the 18-19 and 19-20 fiscal years, did not include language specifying the legal level of budgetary control. Budget amounts were not presented at a level that enabled financial statement users to readily determine whether resources were expended within budgeted amounts consistent with City Commission intent, and budget to actual expenditure comparisons were not timely presented to the City Commission. And again, we were asked to clarify this finding does not apply to the GRU budget. Okay, the next slide is more administration and management issues. That's findings 11 and 12. So finding 11 was that monitoring and transparency of the city's golf course operations could be improved. And finding 12 is that the city could improve accountability and transparency over redevelopment activities carried out pursuant to an interlocal agreement with Alachua County. That's basically the old Community Redevelopment Association that was converted into the Community Reinvestment Agency, rather. Okay, so then we move on to payroll and personnel administration, which is findings 13 and 14. And city policies and procedures for obtaining and documenting background checks of applicants seeking employment need enhancement. And contrary to city policy, the city did not always conduct annual employee performance evaluations. And when evaluations were conducted, did not always promptly communicate the results of the evaluations to the employees. And finally, to wrap things up, we are getting into miscellaneous expenditures, which are findings 15 through 18. So the first item is that the GRU did not periodically use a competitive process to select certain professionals who assisted in the bond issuance process. Controls over city assigned purchasing cards, that's P cards is the abbreviation, need improvement to ensure that P card assignments and credit limits are periodically evaluated and appropriately adjusted. The city needs to enhance efforts to ensure that P cards are promptly canceled upon a cardholder's separation from city employment. And finally, the GRU needs to enhance travel policies and procedures to require employees to sign their travel vouchers, reduce meal allowances paid to the traveler for meals included in conference registration fees, document the necessity of multiple individuals attending the same conference, and require that travel arrangements be made sufficiently far in advance to minimize travel costs. So that's just a brief summary of the 18 findings. And I'll turn it back over to the committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Noonan. Appreciate the overview. And let me go back to Ms. Bigby for any follow-up comments. And I think just for those who haven't been as sort of entrenched in this process, where do we go from here? We have these findings. We have management's responses to those findings. We have a final report. So I think the big question is, what's next?
Thank you, Mayor, committee members. The Auditor General may want to comment, but I believe they will come back in about 18 months to check on the remediation of the action plans that we have all agreed to. So at the back of your full report are all of management's action plans, and those are the steps that management will take to address the issues that the Auditor General has described. We can also, internal audit could do some spot checks during that 18-month period and make sure that we stay on track.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is that it's not sort of forgotten and then 18 months later we come back, but it's sort of an ongoing process and we get updates as progress is made. Another thing I think it's important to point out is that many of these findings were findings of our own as well. For example, we'd done a pretty thorough audit of Reichert House, and many of the things that the Auditor General pointed out, we had also been concerned about and had already been working on fixing and solutions to those. And I think the good news is that we have a head start on many of these and have already developed ways to address them and report back to the commission on their progress, and then the ones we don't, we'll work those into our plan. But I especially want to thank our management team for the seriousness with which they approach this, and then their thoughtful consideration about how to best address all of these issues in a timely manner. Questions from the committee? Okay, we will want to, go ahead, Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll go ahead and make the motion to accept the Auditor General's report.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to accept the Auditor General's report, and we'll also forward this to the full commission for their consideration as well. All right, Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to speak to this issue?
Yes, we have Mr. Nathan Scott.
Okay, Mr. Scott, welcome.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Poe, Mr. Monk, Commissioner Ariola, and State Auditor Nathan Scott. The state audit report validates the concerns brought forth by well-informed citizens that the mayor and Gainesville City Commission have negligently ignored for nearly a decade. Specifically, that GRU has been crippled with debt, that the general fund transfer is excessive, and that significant management deficiencies and material weaknesses exist within the city general government finance department. The commission needs to stop making excuses and accept responsibility for its negligence and failure to act, Mayor Poe. Commissioner Ariola, you sit on this committee. You spend more time talking about strong mayor, raising your salary, and increasing city staff, your own support staff, than you've spent on addressing these valid issues. This audit report is an indictment of the failed policies and governance of the city commission. You guys don't pay attention to important issues. I'm very thankful we have Mr. Monk's expertise to help us and guide us along the way in correcting these deficiencies. And Ms. Bigsby, I commend you for your efforts in trying to fix the noted deficiencies and not sugarcoat it. But to hear this commission say we've known about this, you've known about it because we've told you for nearly a decade and you've done nothing about it, Mayor Poe. GRU's outstanding debt service payment obligation is currently $2.65 billion and is projected to increase to $6.55 billion through 2065 as a result of meeting the City Commission's goal of 100% renewable energy by 2045. Additionally, beginning with December 1st, GRU residential electric rates are now $163.75 per 1,000 kWh, which is 35% higher than FPL's, and 3 times the fuel adjustment charge is 3 times higher than what the PSC just approved for FPL. 35% higher. Due to the electric increases approved by the City Commission and the fuel adjustment charges increased, the fuel adjustment charge increases implemented by GRU. GRU debt has been downgraded 5 times in less than 10 years under your failed policies, Mayor Poe, resulting in nearly GRU customers paying nearly $60 million in additional borrowing costs. GRU's annual debt service payment obligations are projected to increase to over $100 million per year, which is 25% of GRU's entire budget, annual budget. GRU electric rates are unaffordable, and that current and projected debt levels are unsustainable. Without change in city governments and you focusing on these important critical issues, the city commission will continue to raise unaffordable GRU rates to pay for this growing mountain of debt. And again, this is due to the ongoing mismanagement of GRU and city at the hands of the mayor of the Gainesville City Commission. You're to blame. Accept responsibility.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Madam Clerk, our next speaker.
Donald Shepard.
Welcome, Mr. Shepard.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Donald Shepard, and I thank you, commissioners and ma'am. Nathan Scott said a mouthful. He said the truth. He's set the example for what I'm about to say is, where's the money going? Purvis Gray, number of other accountants have reviewed the financials. There's all been lies ever since the audit reports since 2008 has been kicked down the road. I've been doing this since 2008, trying to walk in your shoes, Mr. Pohl, and other mayors and commissioners, and go home and be upset and have people on the street say, you know, why ain't the money going for the people? We put them in the office, but yet we're not getting nothing back. And this here, I think, is another devastation. We wanted John Carmichael to be the leader of the Greece marketplace. Where's the $256,000 that he received to help that place? Went into his pocket to pay his rent for the house that he got out of the $256,000 was supposed to help people. He took and bought a house with it.
Mr. Shepard, that's just not true. That's incorrect information.
So this here report, we haven't yet not to know, because we don't have the expertise that Mr. War has, or the Audit Finance Board has, to take and lead us into a better future. We're at a standstill as far as trying to take and believe within our commissioners and mayors. And the people want answers, but I still doubt whether we're going to find it in this report. But I have to be a believer and wait and see if it's going to be that in the upcoming year, because we got 30 days in which to prove ourselves. So, as I said in the county meeting, each person that took in falsified public records is going to be fined $40,000 per person. This here comes from the Trump Representation Board, that this here is an action that is not taken lightly. Biden has told people we're stopping the mandating of masks and COVID stuff, but yet it keeps going on. So we need to stop it immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Joe Beatty.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. I guess Happy New Year to everybody. Joe Beatty. First of all, I got a text from somebody that says your streaming is going in and out. So, you know that?
No, I didn't know that,
We,
but
we are having technical issues with the streaming today.
okay.
Makes it hard for the public to participate when that happens. Okay, could I ask a question of Mr. Noonan or Ms. Bigby or somebody? I'd like to understand page 38 of the report where it does, well, there and beyond, where it's objective scope and methodology. There appear to be many more issues addressed in here and enumerated that were examined and such, reviewed, et cetera. And I just would like a little clarification on if there was any determinations on any of that. How is that information used? Will we get more information about those things? Besides the findings that are in the front, some of this is not addressed in the findings. So I would, if I may, ask for Ms. Bigby or Mr. Noonan to explain that so the public knows. And also, it would be nice if the committee members would maybe ask some questions so that the public knows some of what's in here and, point out some things so that we don't just say, oh, this is okay, we're working on it. So anyway, if I could have the answers to those questions, I'd be most appreciative. And I'm sure the public out there would be too. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody else?
It looks like we do have one person waiting in the Zoom meeting.
Sure, let's go ahead and take that.
Caller with the number ending in 3706 in the Zoom meeting. If you'd like to share a public comment, you can unmute yourself. Caller ending in 370.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hi. Hello, Ms. Bigby and Mr. Monk. My name is Brian O'Brien, and certainly glad to see you up there on the dais today. I don't know you, but I've heard that you're a longtime stalwart of the local accounting community, and I'm hopeful that that Mr. Poe will not terminate you like he's done so many other people, such as Ms. Marshall, evidently a long list of people yesterday, Bridget Lee, April Shuping, all the folks that got in the way of his plans to railroad this city on his own agenda. Thank you very much to State Auditor Derek Noonan and Stephanie Johnson for their professional work, JLAC for initiating this audit, and I know that Mr. Noonan and Ms. Johnson worked under difficult circumstances, this being a pandemic and the city's continued failure to be transparent, even in the face of this audit. The evidence of the lack of transparency was already documented earlier by Mr. Scott, where the agenda was withheld. As good a job as Ms. Bigby is doing, the power to post the agenda in the backup is held by Mr. Poe. And that iron fist that he runs the city with is what makes this meeting so important. I hate to say it, but you've got the wrong people up there on the dais in those other two seats. Mr. Poe, Mr. Areola, they were present and rubber stamped all of this financial mismanagement, most of the time without asking a single question, just like Mr. Areola did today. Just follows the dictum of the leader. Until we replace the management at the top, there's very little hope that anything's going to change in Gainesville. It's nice that we have the problems clearly identified at this time, but we cannot expect the current leadership to be the ones who enforce the need for change. I appreciate your attendance at this meeting and hope that the citizens of Gainesville will attend more of these meetings so that their voices can be heard and that the will of the people can be carried out rather than the will of one. Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, is there anybody else?
I don't see anyone waiting at this time, but if you're in the Zoom meeting and you'd like to share a public comment, please dial *9 to raise your hand.
Okay, thank you. Couple corrections really quickly. First of all, I do not have the authority to terminate or hire anybody. The commission hires 6 individuals as a body, but certainly is far outside of my authority to make any hiring or firing decisions, including the members of this committee as well. So you can rest easy that your role here certainly is not dependent upon me. I do want to point out, I think that Mr. Scott said that we had ignored or did not address GRU's outstanding debt. We have been working for quite some time on a debt defeasance plan, and I think you've been at most of those meetings. They have included lowering of the GFT, of using savings to pay down debt, and a variety of other methods, and we'll continue to discuss that as we go into the budget hearings for this season. You also, Mr. Scott also said that the audit report pointed out that the GFT was too high, when in fact the finding was that there is not a agreed upon and consistent transfer formula that is used. It wasn't about the level of the GFT. I would like, if maybe, I think probably most appropriately, Mr. Noonan to speak to how the decision was made to include the ultimate findings versus the broader sort of scope and methodology of the audit and how they approach that in general. So, Mr. Noonan, if you'd be willing to sort of just, I think that's more of a process question. Ms. Beatty is very often focused on process, and so if you could discuss y'all's process about sort of how you started and then where you ended up with the findings in the official report.
Okay, sure. There's a lot to go to that. So what happened is when the Joint Legislative Audit Committee directed us to do the audit, we were directed to go see the legislative delegation folks. So we asked them for concerns, and what mostly happened is we were referred to some citizens that had contacted the various members of the legislative delegation. So we interviewed a lot of folks, we took a lot of notes, and then we kind of developed our scope for the audit. You know, we took the stuff that we thought was the most significant and said, okay, let's go look at this stuff. So what you're seeing in objective scope and methodology is essentially a laundry list of stuff we looked at. And so if you see something in that section and there's not a corresponding finding, that doesn't necessarily mean that we looked at it and everything was perfect, but we looked at it and we didn't find anything that rose to the level where we felt like we needed to report it. So, the inference is, you know, if you see something in that objective scope and methodology section and there's not a corresponding finding, is that, you know, it was that we didn't find anything significant enough to report on. But that just kind of gives you an idea. You know, it was a fairly wide scope. We had a lot of allegations from a lot of different folks, and I don't know that every single thing we looked at is on pages 39 through, 45. But, you know, the significant stuff is all listed out there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Noonan. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, back to Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Auditor General and our own audit team, everybody who's working on this. I think it is important for us to make sure that we're following up on the issues 18 months from now and in the intermediate time, because a lot of these are issues that are going to come up during the regular budgetary meetings that the City Commission holds, and just making sure that we're taking best practices into account as recommended, both by management's agreement with the recommendations from the Auditor General, but of course the recommendations themselves, which, you know, many of them are sound, as you said. We have been working on many of these issues, and some of these are issues that I expect management to take very seriously, particularly the personnel issues, and particularly the oversight and transparency issues. Those are significant, and from the dais, it's our job to ensure that we are asking for those recommendations to be followed up on, and that we receive those in a timely manner, not just as this committee, but that the full commission receive those, so that we can make sure that they've been handled appropriately. You know, don't want to go into too much detail about the audit report. We're going to accept it, and the commission will, of course, have the opportunity to review it. But I feel pretty hopeful, because a lot of these issues we have been talking about for a very long time, and I know that our staff and our auditor have been paying very close attention to many of them. So I look forward to seeing those follow-ups in the intermediate time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a motion to accept the report and forward it to the full City Commission for their consideration. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, Ms. Johnson and Mr. Noonan again. And we'll not hesitate to reach out if we have any other questions as we go through the sort of way we address these different items. All right, next up, we have General Government Internal Control over Financial Reporting Audit. Ms. Bigby?
Thank you, Mayor, committee members. I'd like to introduce Audit Manager Greg Robeson, who will present this next audit report.
Mr. Robertson, welcome. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, sir. Thank you for having me up here today. I'm going to adjust this mic if people can tell me if it's the right place now.
Sounds good.
Y'all hear me good?
Yep, sounds good.
I tend to have that problem every time I come up. This report is on the internal controls over financial reporting for the general government. Effective internal controls over financial reporting provide the reasonable assurance that general government financial reports are reliable, clear, accurate, and for internal and external stakeholders. General statement, without these internal controls, we can't really rely upon the financial statements that we have, or the financial data that is provided may not be accurate. The city's external auditors have noted recurring material weaknesses and significant deficiencies in internal controls over the past 3 years. This is known and we've been reported on. They've also made recommendations. The city auditor's office, we've been monitoring this for a period of time, and in December of 2020, we presented a report based upon what we've been monitoring, and we did notice that at that time some of the areas were being worked upon. Subsequent to the city auditor's report, continuous monitoring efforts indicated that the budget and finance department were still experiencing staffing shortfalls, and it showed insufficient progress in high-risk areas. And I just realized I didn't advance the slide when I should have.
Yeah.
Can you please, and that's all on this right here. Give me a second there, and then I'll go to next. Excuse me?
I think they're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, maybe get closer?
Sure.
Is that better?
I think so. Donald, is that better? Well, he's not talking right now.
Okay, I'll try. Hopefully that's better. Next slide, please. Again, as I mentioned, we did some continuous monitoring since that report, and due to some staffing shortfalls and some inexperience, we determined that there hadn't been sufficient progress made on those significant weaknesses, and therefore we conducted this particular audit, which was added to the audit plan in 2021. Next slide, please. The overall objective of the audit was simple. It was to assess the design and effectiveness of internal controls over financial reporting processes to ensure that the risk of errors, financial reporting, misstatements, and fraud were sufficiently mitigated in the areas of risk of areas. Yeah. Next slide, please. Make sure I keep up with what I'm doing here. The scope of methodology, we performed the audit through inquiry, test of substantive testing, observations for the period of October 1st, 2020 through September of 2021, the fiscal year of FY21. Some of the areas we covered were policies and procedures, closing schedules and checklists, general ledger mapping to the uniform accounting structure, account reconciliations, centralized grant management, and the CFA preparation, and the preparations for GASB 87 leases, which will be effective in the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. Just some background. As I mentioned before, ICFR's internal controls over financial reporting, they relate to the controls that specifically designed to mitigate the associated risks for financial reporting. They're very important. Management is responsible for those. And financial statements, part of that is that those develop and are required, and then the state statutes require that these financial statements are to be published within 9 months. So there's the controls help us to get to that point. The city, over the past 3 years, though, the city has had to pay $123,734.41 in additional fees to the external auditors in order to prepare those financial statements for audit. Next slide, please. The ability of the general government finance to produce audited financial statements in a timely manner has posed problems in the past. As you can see on the table coming up, that there's been some significant delays. A new financial director was hired in July of 2020, but however, there's still some struggles to report this. If you can please go to the next slide, I'll explain this a little bit. As you can see from the slide, for the last few years, we started off with a reasonable amount, an expectation of delivering the financial statements in 175 days. However, since that period of time, the period of time to produce these financial statements is extended. We did make a significant progress after the hiring of the financial director for the reporting of last year. However, since that time, we've also gone backwards. Next slide, please. In addition to the delays, the city auditor, the external auditors have reported recurring material weaknesses and significant deficiencies in internal controls for the past 3 years, FY 2018 through FY 20. And some of these are expected to be also identified in the current financial reports. Go to the next slide, please. As you can see here, some of the significant areas, they were in bank reconciliations, which is continuous over the last 3 years. Financial closing and reporting, which, as I mentioned, timeliness and getting things done. 2020, just the CFA had some significant deficiencies. The accounting for grant activity was also in 2020 alone. Segregation of duties issues were for the 3 years, and then some building permit reconciliations had some issues in 2020. Next slide, please. Overall, we determined that general government internal controls over financial reporting were not designed adequately and or operating collectively, which places the city at a high risk of presenting misstatements and untimely financial reports. Some of the other areas that went into this, policies and procedures. As I noted earlier, we reviewed policies and procedures, and we determined that they just didn't have sufficient policies and procedures. Closing schedules and checklists, though they were worked upon, checklists and other closing financial reporting schedules were not yet implemented or used in a consistent manner. On the general ledger mapping area, there were just some minor areas where some fund codes and general ledger accounts didn't strictly match to the UAS. However, management's overall system did include a uniform classification of accounts. Account reconciliations is pretty significant. We did notice that the bank statements the master fund bank statements reconciled through February when we did our audit through October or through September. However, the reconciliations had continuous carryovers of certain items, so it meant that the transactions weren't being corrected in a timely manner as well. We looked at the centralized grant management process. While the city has budgeted for a centralized grant accountant who will assist various departments and administer grants, the position has not been filled yet. The new position was added in FY 22 and became available to be filled in October. So there is some progress being made in that regard. Schedule of expenditures of federal awards. This grant accountant will be instrumental in ensuring that this gets accurately and timely reported. We found only a few errors in that area. Preparation of implementation for GASB 87 leases. It has an effective date for reporting periods beginning in June of 2021, so that's this year for us. The GASB 87 revisits the way in which a government entity is required to account for leases in the financial record, and since the city has quite a few leases, it's imperative that we get a head start on this. But as of yet, accounting division personnel had not yet begun preparations for identifying all existing leases and the activity that may be considered leases under the new statements. We need to get ahead of that. If you'll advance to the next slide, please. Overall, we have a major observation or a major finding. and that is internal controls over financial reporting are inadequate and do not provide for the accurate and timely reporting of the city's financial activity and position. Two major categories in this area were the procedures, as I mentioned a little earlier. Written narratives and standard operating procedures were not adequate. And then also account reconciliations. Key balance sheet accounts are incomplete and are not being prepared or reviewed in a timely manner. Next slide, please. Management has provided responses to these issues. They've hired a CPA firm to provide immediate support with both day-to-day operations, reconciliations, final year, fiscal year closeout, and external audit preparation. And additionally, they're going to be implementing additional actions. They're going to be creating a new staffing structure, which is expected to be completed between January 31st and March 31st of this year. They're actively reviewing policies and procedures for revisions and updates to include clear reporting requirements such as quarterly financial reporting and debt management and a debt manual. The financial director is responsible for this, and it's expected to be done no later than September 30th of 2022. They are also implementing immediate training and cross-training across the accounting division with the assistance of Collaborative Solutions, who is the Workday, our new ERP system implementer, and the external CPA firm. The implemented recommendations will be for internal control improvements such as proper segregation of duties, performing significant account reconciliations on a monthly basis, closing and reconciling the general ledger on a monthly basis, year-end reconciliations, and closing processes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bigby, anything to add?
Hi, Mayor, committee members, I'm wondering if Mr. Robeson can speak a little bit more to reconciliations. What is a reconciliation and why is it important?
Key balance sheet account reconciliations are very important so they establish the stability of those accounts. You take a beginning balance and you want to get to the ending balance. You want to know what happens in the middle. So you need to know what those are, and then when you do your reconciliation, if you have any variances from any other outside sources, you need to reconcile those in a timely manner and get them adjusted so that the financial statements are presented accurately. What was occurring is that we may have done some of that portion, but we weren't doing the full reconciliation processes. We may identify some of the variances, but we weren't finding the source and getting those corrected in a timely manner. Does that help him?
And you're speaking to the reconciliation of a master cash account, but what about the balance sheet accounts?
Similarly, on the other balance sheet accounts, they need to be reconciled from beginning to end to show the balances and any variances. There were some other accounts that we requested reconciliations for, and they were not provided.
Okay, thank you. We've got a few questions. I know I have a few of my own, so we'll start with Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your work in providing us this report. I, of course, think it's very important that, from the Commission's perspective, that we receive the management action plan. Each of these bullet points, I think, are really appropriate, so I'm really glad to see the recommendations coming from the managers. I would like to see these come before the Commission as soon as possible, at least, because some of these are going to have impacts on the budget. Some because they're new positions, or some, I see we're still waiting for recommendations from the interim city manager and the general manager for shared functionality in the financial services area. I'd like for this to come before the Commission as soon as possible because I think that this is going to be one of the most important things that we do all year. I think that when you look at the findings of material weakness and significant deficiencies, this is going to be one of the most important things that management does all year. And I want to support them in their efforts to meeting this action plan. So the reason why I say all this is because I know there's going to take Commission action for some of these items, and I'd like for that to come before the full Commission so we can give authorization for those actions as soon as possible. Because I very much want this to be, I don't want to sound dramatic, but this is, to me, this is the most important management item for the year, and I'd like for the Commission to have full support for the action plan going forward so that by this time next year, we have effectively taken care of the action plan.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Monk?
Yes, thank you. There were several things in here that really caught my attention, one of which was, as you mentioned, some of these material weaknesses have been identified for years, same ones over and over. Now, a material weakness, that's a great name, but a lot of people don't realize the significance of that. For the city of Gainesville, or a similar city, the approximate size with the number of transactions that flow through and such, material would be a very expensive error to occur. You could be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars before it reaches what's considered material. So I just say that to emphasize that these are important issues to protect the value of the assets within the city. And it's not something that should be blown off. And the other issue that caught my attention was where the auditors requested information so that they could do their jobs better, and it wasn't provided. There's no excuse for that. You have to have cooperation at all levels through the city finance especially, and if you can't get the information, you can't do your job as an auditor. And that's about the most frustrating thing you can have. It's clear that you need some additional personnel that have a higher level of understanding of government accounting. And with this new GASB statement that's coming out, there is going to be a lot of work just to get the information to comply with that standard. And one of the issues that related to that is you have to go back and retroactively do that work. A lot of times it'll just be statement comes out and you have to change at that point and go forward. But with this, you've got to go back, and you could have hundreds of leases that could be 20 years old, and you're going to have to go back to the original documentation on those to get the information to make I won't say corrections because it's just a change in principles, but to bring those amounts up to date. So there are some real issues that are indicated in this, and it comes down to accountability and who's going to be accountable. So it's great, as it indicates in the plan, that you are implementing checklists and other aids to make sure that these things are done. But if there's not follow-up by someone to see that those were completed, you lose it all. I mean, it's just back to 5 years in a row instead of 4. You'll have the same thing. In my career, it was very rare, even in some very large cities that I was involved with, to see a repeat finding of a material weakness 2 years in a row, much less 4. I was a little dumbfounded, as a matter of fact, when I read that. So, but it is important that you find a process that includes that ultimate accountability where somebody is checking to see that whoever was assigned the responsibility for those reconciliations have done it. And, they can sign off or whatever, but somebody's got to ultimately take responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monk. I've got sort of a broad question, maybe with some follow-ups, but I think they're probably most appropriate for the city manager. So, Mr. Roberson, thank you for the report. And Ms. Curry, full acknowledgement that you've been on the job a little over 2 months and are still looking under the hood and, identifying, where the challenges and opportunities are. But clearly this is something that jumped off the page and got on your radar quickly. So, to say that I've been frustrated by the lack of significant progress in this area is understating it. Mr. Monk's right. Usually we get a finding, it gets addressed, and we don't hear about it again. So, we have got to take the steps necessary to make sure that a year from now, we're not seeing the same report, right? My question, though, is why? Is this a staffing issue? Is this an organizational issue? Is this a software issue? Or is it some combination of all of those? In other words, what's made it, in your estimation, so difficult to do this correction and get things, to a place where we're confident, the risks have been minimized, and we have a process and an accountability that makes sure that we're not losing sleep at night over these very important issues. So I'm just curious what, in your professional opinion, sort of what got us here, and then what are the solutions to correct these things?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cynthia Curry, interim city manager, City of Gainesville. In answer to your question, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, I think we start really with a basic staffing issue. And let me first say that I do agree with the findings of the auditor. We have prepared a management response, which we do intend to follow. I take full responsibility from this point forward as it relates to the implementation of the actions in the management action plan. But I do believe that the core issue has to do with staffing and the capacity of staffing in the finance department. As was mentioned in the audit, there is no certified public accountant in the finance department, which is a major issue. As a part of my review of the organization overall, and in meeting with the finance director, it is clear that we need to cure that immediately. And what we have done is prepared the appropriate recruitment, review of the classification and compensation for that skill set to be in the finance department, to be able to provide that leadership, coupled with the director of the department and the capacity of those under the controller once that person gets in. The consulting firm that is there now, they are, in addition to doing some of the back office work, to get us to a point where we can produce a financial report on time, which will still be a challenge, I might add, this year, because the staffing issues are already in place. The lack of staffing is in place. And that is why we have to bring the support of the CPA firm on. So we're going to do the very best that we can, even in the current circumstances, to try to make sure that we are timely, but it will still be a challenge. And I put that on the record this year, and I've already spoken to the auditor about that. As it relates to policies and standards, procedures, I'm not going to say that that is an issue, but the consistency in the application of that throughout this process is a concern, and we need to do that. The cross-training, right now we have absences in the office that has severely impacted this process, and cross-training for that obviously is an issue, which is why, of course, we've had to bring in the support of the firm, the consulting firm, to support staff. So I would say, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee, that it really starts with a severe staffing issue, a capacity issue within the staff that has to be addressed, and we are working on that. I have met with the director, of course, and she is here. If you'd like to hear a little bit more detail from her It's Cynthia Ramos. We share the first name, but her last name is Ramos, Cynthia Ramos. She's the director. I'm sure she can confirm what I'm saying, but it does start with the staffing issue as it relates to funding to address that. You've made it clear, the commission has made it clear that this is a priority, and they will support me as it relates to addressing the appropriate staffing for the finance department to get on track.
Okay, thank you. It's at your discretion if Ms. Ramos wants to come up. If she covered it, Ms. Ramos, or if there's other things that you're good, okay. Yeah, we don't need to be redundant. So, Madam Auditor, what I would like, if there's no objection from the members of the committee, is I'd like for every audit meeting if we have an update on progress on this. I would just like to know that, especially with the staffing stuff, that we're making progress, that we're getting people, hired and onboarded. And, I know this isn't sort of an overnight fix, but we have got to see consistent, steady progress, especially as our annual reports are going to be coming due, and those other huge sort of lifts that we have to do. So we'll just sort of put a placeholder in the upcoming agenda for an update on the progress of this. Okay, the appropriate action then for the committee would be to accept this report and forward it to the commission. Is there any objection? Okay, motion and a second to forward this to the full commission and accept the report. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
First will be Nathan Scott.
Okay.
Mayor Poe, before we begin, I'd like to have the overhead, please. And if we could zoom in. Zoom in a little bit more on this part. I'll adjust. Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor Poe, Nathan Scott. So this is the City Auditor's executive summary of what was just presented. This is the key part in blue. What we found, as a result of our review, we determined that general government internal controls over financial reporting are not designed adequately and/or operating efficiently or effectively, which places the city at a high risk of presenting misstated and untimely financial reports. Written procedures were inadequate and do not provide for the consistent and timely reporting of financial activity. Key balance sheet account reconciliations are incomplete and are not being prepared or reviewed in a timely manner. Again, this is part of the ongoing problems. We've told you about this. There's been evidence to suggest in past audit reports that this problem exists, yet it's still not solved. And again, what I've heard, and it's somewhat nice that you guys are finally seem to get a wake-up call, and I appreciate Mr. Monk's comments, which were spot on. That should be a wake-up call in itself. But Mayor Poe, with all due respect, I find your comments to be completely disingenuous. Management oversight is a key function of the mayor and city commission. You failed the taxpayers. You failed the city, because the city commission spends the majority of its time virtue signaling about everything other than core governance and core city functions. You had the opportunity to address this years ago, and here we are today. State audit, in the wake of a state audit, and having a good now city auditor telling you in unequivocal terms, you have a problem. So again, excuse me for saying this, but your excuses seem like you're living in an animated state of disbelief and denial as to the real issues and critical issues facing the city of Gainesville and GRU customers. Again, City Commission has a fiduciary duty to taxpayers. Mr. Monk alluded to that. We've heard that we're hiring a consultant to do back office function, a CPA firm. How much is that costing taxpayers? You've expanded city government. You've hired people with salaries, large salaries. and yet you have these problems because you're focused. I guess you're focused on being woke than core good governance. I don't know. I mean, I just don't get it. But it needs to be a wake-up call. And finally, on the point that you like to twist my words, you said they didn't say this long-term ability of GRU to pay. If it wasn't excessive, they'd be able to pay
Thank
it.
you, Mr. Scott. I just am pointing out that they did not say what you said.
Put it up on the screen.
Thank you, Ms. Malden. Madam Clerk?
Next is Donald Shepard. I don't see him present,
9/11.
so we'll go to Joe Beatty.
Okay.
Good afternoon again. I just wanted to welcome Mr. Monk here. I meant to do that in my first comments, but I get so focused on the other things that sometimes I pass that over. Mr. Monk, it is so refreshing to have you sitting up there and in attendance and speaking to some of these issues. If we had had you years ago, we probably wouldn't be here. And I do appreciate your comments, your insight, your experience, and that you are helping to underline the importance of these things. That's not been our experience in the past. I welcome you. I wish you a long tenure on this committee. Thank you.
Okay, anybody on Zoom?
It looks like we have one caller waiting in Zoom. Caller with the number ending in 3706. You may unmute yourself and share your comment.
Thank you. Brian O'Brien again for the record. Again, Mr. Monk, I appreciate you being up there on the dais. Your comments are spot on indeed, and I'd like to take us back to the delivery of the comprehensive audit and finance report of 2018, which was presented in 2019, approximately June the 18th to the committee, where Mr. Poe told us that the staffing was the problem. Staffing was the problem, and that it had all been resolved at the time the report was finally submitted in its final form. 2 days later, he put it on the consent agenda, did not let the public see what was going on, and he assured the public that the staff was back up to full staffing. 2020, when the CAFR was submitted to the Audit and Finance Committee, which is the predecessor organization to this committee, Mr. Poe again said it was a staffing issue. But he assured us, taxpayers, that everything had been resolved. We're back up to full staffing. So this is nonsense. I refuse to accept that he just gets another person up there to give us the same excuse. I did misspeak earlier. Mr. Poe doesn't fire anybody, Mr. Monk. He just drowns them with various baloney, gaslighting, misrepresentation. Let's see, Carlos Holt, prior city auditor, as an example. So, you know, this is a well-documented course. I've attended every audit and finance meeting for the past 3 years, and I'm glad there's now an expert to assist with Virginia Bigby's very competent and expert reports. But I once again have to warn you that until the other two people on the dais are no longer there, there will be no full accounting in Gainesville. This borders on activity that if I was in law, I'll be taking a serious look at this, the behavior that has been allowed to go on and on. The depth of the financial problems at the city of Gainesville are a result
Thank you, Mr.
of
O'Brien.
decisions
Appreciate you calling
and
in.
actions by Mr. Poe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anybody else?
If anyone is attending in Zoom and would like to share a comment, please dial *9 to raise your hand. And I'm told that the stream should be improved now, and we're also broadcasting on Facebook.
Okay. Okay, we'll come back to the committee then. Motion is to accept the report and forward it to full city commission for their consideration. All in favor say aye. All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. All right, Madam Clerk, our final item for discussion is the audit of Colliers International.
Thank you, Mayor, committee members. May I make one comment on the prior report?
Of course.
Management reminded me, which is accurate, that the additional $123,000 that we had to pay for an outside firm to help compile the financial statements was not in addition to salaries, but it was paid through salary savings. So it was not actually an additional cost to taxpayers, but probably a little bit extra than what it would cost for employed folks to do it, but they were short-staffed.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
All right.
Sanderson, welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Good afternoon.
I'd like to introduce Rekha Anderson, who is our Assistant City Auditor, and she's going to be presenting the report on our contract compliance audit for the Colliers contract. And I'd just like to mention that management decided not to renew the contract when it expired December 31st.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Committee Member Mock. I'm presenting the results of our review of contract compliance for the Colliers International contract. I'd like to begin by thanking management and staff of CAPER, Budget and Finance, and the Interim City Manager's Office for your continued support during this review. Okay, I do have slides available, please. If you could share the slides for the Colliers.
Broadcast, if you could put the slides on the projector, we would appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay. All right, CAPER was created to centralize real estate management activities and other focus areas, which some of them were not in scope. So we're focusing on today on the real estate management activities that CAPER oversaw. The city contracted Colliers in October 2020 to provide third-party commercial brokerage and lease administration services for the city. CAPER administered the contract along with support from other departments such as City Finance and GCRA. Next slide, please. During the audit, we did look at compliance with the deliverables, terms, and conditions of the contracts with Colliers. Colliers management is, contract management is important to ensure that things work smoothly with the contract and that services are delivered as agreed upon. Next slide, please. We looked at contract-related activities from January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021 to determine if they were in compliance with the contract. Next slide, please. The city did issue an RFP and Colliers was selected. The contract was effective in October of 2020. And as Ms. Bigby just mentioned, during this engagement, management decided not to renew its contract with Colliers International upon expiration, December 31st, 2021. Next slide, please. Okay. The city owns multiple properties that are leased to tenants. CAPER has purview over these city leases, and Colliers facilitated the day-to-day lease administration processes. Some of the processes Colliers performed was advertising available properties, billing the tenants, collecting the rent payments from the tenants, sending that money over to the city monthly, and collecting the 3% management fee for those services. Colliers also provided support for the acquisition and disposition of properties. They aided city management with that service. They provided property valuations and reported progress on the activities in support of the real estate management function. Next slide, please. Overall, we believe that management has been proactive in communications with third-party with a third party to administer the contract. However, we did identify some opportunities for improvement. Okay? All right, so here, these are our results and conclusions. We do have 2 issues that we have highlighted here. Next slide, please. Issue 1 is inadequate oversight of financial activity. We noted that management's reconciliation of financial activity could be enhanced. There are errors in the lease payments that led to overpayments. One rent payment was not remitted timely because of a previous overpayment, and these errors were all corrected. Overall, the third party overpaid the city by approximately $1,800 as of the issuance of this report. Management's working to reconcile any differences. They're working on that right now since we're closing out that contract. Management's action plan. Next slide, please. Management will enhance documented procedures to ensure the billing and collection of the lease payments to the real estate consultant and transfer to the city are all accurate, all of that's timely. And these procedures will include roles like for oversight, monitoring reconciliation, and just centralizing and keeping track of the tenants and the properties, because a lot of that information was in the hands of the third party, but management and third party did meet periodically. Okay, next slide, please. Our second issue was insufficient contract administration procedures. Okay, the city has an approved real estate policy that governs disposition of land and lease terms. Centralized procedures to administer the contract should be enhanced. We did see this real estate policy. We did review it. However, there were no centralized procedures for the day-to-day activities that should occur when you're administering a contract. All right, centralized procedures were also not in place for efficiently tracking and resolving tenant complaints. Potential conflicts of interest were not adequately managed. A third-party report with recommendations for the city's real estate portfolio was not submitted as of the issuance of the report. The city's action plan. City leadership agreed, as they did with issue 1. They're going to work through, as they're working through the transition, because management's going to have to transition to whatever they're going to decide. I'm sure they'll speak to that. They're developing the next step for real estate service management. Okay, and management will work with cross-functional stakeholders to establish and document centralized procedures that govern city real estate acquisition, disposition, and lease activities. Now I'll turn it back over to Ms. Beebe.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. We were just going to invite Ms. Curry, interim city manager, to speak. Is that
Sure.
a good time?
Yeah, Ms. Curry, I think kind of looking forward as we go out and figure out our next steps for, whomever might fill this role, and just, baking these into the contract that we make with them to make sure it's understood and agreed upon going into that.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to yield to Eric Bretfeld.
Mr. Bredfeld, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the Audit Committee. What I'd like to do maybe is just go through the report and just highlight a couple of items, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I think it might be helpful. If you look at page 5 of the report, first paragraph under the introduction, I wanted to reemphasize what Brecca had said about the disengagement. This engagement was entered into with Kyers in October of 2020, and the contract had an expiration date of December 31st, 2021. So that the management decided to let that expire. So we're not under contract anymore. We actually are in a 30-day reconciliation period with them to reconcile various matters under the contract. On page number 7, at the top under the background, I did want to reemphasize the point and make sure that the public and the city commission and the members of the committee remember that the city does have real estate policies, city commission real estate policies that govern currently when we have to bring things to the city commission, either leases and or sale or acquisition of property. If they meet certain thresholds, we have to bring those things to the city commission, which we do. So I wanted to mention that. I think under the prior management, the idea was that we were going to try to centralize the real estate operation for the city, because it's been disparate, and frankly, we've had a land rights program, but not credentialed individuals that do real estate. And I think the city's objectives with real estate are to take things to the next level. So that's why we engaged with Colliers to begin with. A little further down on page 7, the 2 points about the way that Colliers was reimbursed or paid for this contract. One was, remember that they received a 3% administration fee on administration of leases, which was basically collecting the leases, doing the financial reports for the city finance. They received 3%. You'll see in the middle paragraph that 3% totaled approximately $1,174 per month. So over the course of last year, they were paid out of the proceeds of rent that the city received from its approximately 30 to 35 tenants, and that amount was approximately $1,200 per month. The second way they were going to be reimbursed was through payment of commissions for sale of property. You'll see in that in the next paragraph. And I wanted to emphasize here that over the course of the year, the Colliers, we only entered 2 contracts with Colliers. One was for Lot 10, which came before the City Commission. That contract is not closed yet, so there's been no commission paid. We anticipated closing this month, but there was no commission paid to Colliers. And then there was only one other property that was under contract, which also came to the City Commission for approval, which was a property with Shands Teaching Hospital out at the Airport Industrial Park. And again, I want to emphasize that on the commissions for the sale of property, those are being paid by the buyers. So in neither case this is not coming out of the city's coffers. It's coming out of the proceeds of the sale paid by the purchaser. At the bottom of page 7, I just wanted to point out that we did, over the course of the year, have a cross-departmental team. We had a series of monthly meetings with Colliers where they would actually go through all of the leases. There was an opportunity for the staff and Colliers to reconcile lease issues. There was multiple staff, finance, GCRA, Caper staff. So that was ongoing. We also had a bi-weekly meeting with Colliers, which was designed to look at sort of the larger issues and many of the projects that they were handling, which was separate from the lease administration. We did invite the auditor's office to attend 2 of those meetings, which they did. So we appreciate that. As far as the, on page 8, the actual report that was due, I feel like in that case, I don't know what they're going to give us maybe in this reconciliation period. I feel the reason that we didn't get the report is frankly we just got too busy with many other things on all the projects and all the lease administration that we were doing, and we just didn't get them to give us their actual strategic analysis. We were doing a lot basically, and although the strategic plan was on various agendas, we just didn't get it back from them. So I wanted to explain that. And then finally, under the management action plan on page 13, that's assigned to me as a responsible party. We're currently working right now with staff and finance in various departments for the transitional period. And then we hope to talk to management a little bit more about what the approach is going to be moving forward with real estate. Possibly go out for another third party, but that hasn't been decided right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bredfeld. Okay, any questions from the committee? Was there a motion? Good, Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the work on this. This is something that I was very interested in. I am, of course, interested in First, I want to ask, in that reconciliation period, it's 30 days, at the conclusion of that period, if there are not resolutions to any of the issues that are involved, what happens then?
I have to take a little closer, excuse me, Eric Redfeld, Economic Development. I'd have to take a closer look at the termination provision in the contract. I'm not really sure. It's not, I don't know what the rectification of any non-performance in that 30 days would be.
Also, again, Cynthia Curry, I've had some preliminary discussions with the partner involved with Colliers. They're very cooperative, and I don't really see us having an issue with resolving any issues that are outstanding. That's just my take based on the conversations that I've had so far.
Okay, thank you. I guess the reason I asked that, number one, I want to know if we're going to receive that report that they haven't provided, if that's going to be a part of the reconciliation, or if we're deciding that because we allowed their contract to expire, we're no longer, are we still interested in receiving that?
The contract has expired in terms of their services, but we're still working through reconciliation for the next 30 days. I don't believe we're going to have a problem, Commissioner, but if we do, I will bring it to the board's attention. And
Okay.
of course, work with the city attorney.
Okay, thank you. Well, for the purposes of the committee, I will go ahead and motion that we accept the auditor report.
Okay, motion and a second that we accept the report, forward to the full city commission for their consideration. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody that wishes to speak to this item?
Nathan Scott?
Okay,
May I please have the overhead before we begin, please? And if we could zoom in a little bit, please, before my time starts. All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Monk, Nathan Scott. So again, another outstanding executive summary from the city auditor. What we found: inadequate oversight of financial activity, insufficient contract administration procedures. Sounds like a broken record, guys. Again, the city commission's more concerned, and citizens brought these concerns, stemming back to the apparent self-dealing that was exposed at the school board. Citizens brought concerns before the city got into the, and Commissioner Ariel, I would appreciate, instead of texting, you might want to listen to what I'm saying. It's abundantly rude, Mayor Poe, that he would be texting on his phone and not listening to a citizen. Oh, he doesn't seem to care. Wants to run for mayor, and that's the way you treat citizens. That's the way you treat your constituent
Scott, on
from my
the topic.
district. No, well, it's rude, Mayor Poe. Let's talk about civility. It works both ways. I'm being polite, but I'm being disrespected by my commissioner from my district. It's abundantly rude. It's just a negative reflection on this commission. Again, inadequate oversight of financial activity, insufficient contract administration procedures. This commission spends all its time. You want to push forward, Commissioner Ariel wants to push forward strong mayor, salary increases for commissioners, more staff for commissioners. I don't know if a city the size of Gainesville's got a dedicated policy team department, but these are the self-serving proposals that you put forth instead of paying attention to what people have been bringing to your attention for years now. And that's the frustration, because I feel, as just evidence, illustrative example, the commission doesn't listen to people, no matter what their experience level. I have far more professional education than Commissioner Ariel. I have far more professional experience. You have expertise like Mr. Monk. I bring the same thing to this city commission as a citizen, as a former state utility regulator, as a former utility executive, as somebody with expertise in renewable energy, and you guys don't listen. I've built nuclear submarines, airplanes for Boeing. I don't need to go on and on. But I mean, it's just amazing how disrespectful this commission is to the general public and citizens like myself, Ms. Beatty, and others that take our time to come forward as taxpayers and citizens, trying to have our commission, our elected officials, have a dialogue and at least listen to something that we say, because 9 times out of 10, it's pretty intelligent, as evidenced by the state audit findings that you ignored. And when that audit was initiated, you cried political foul. You're like, nothing to see here. Oh, this is just witch hunting. This is politics. Well, what were the results? If you read the audit report, it was pretty much a across-the-board admission of your policies and your failed policies and management deficiencies, but your excuse was, we knew about it, we're working on it. Shaking my head. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Madam Clerk.
Joe Beatty? It doesn't appear we have anyone waiting in the Zoom meeting.
Okay, thank you then, Mr. Scott, for your comments. Move to the commission for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion passes. Up next, we have general public comment. Ms. Beatty?
Once again, good afternoon, Joe Beatty. I should have done this earlier while the auditors from Tallahassee were here. I wanted to thank them, and I want to make the following comments. This audit report validates concerns active, involved, and informed citizens have brought to the attention of commissioners and the various commissions for more than a decade. Thanks to our local delegation for listening to issues and concerns and presenting them to the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee, JLAC. Their representation of constituents' concerns resulted in this audit and an outside look at the operations of the City of Gainesville. The findings validate many of our concerns over the years, which continue and are reported today. I hope this report is a wake-up call to the public and commissioners alike. Concerns should not be ignored or quieted by commission rules. We, the voting public, cannot be complacent. Democracy is not a spectator sport, nor are involved citizens participating in the process by giving information and input to our representatives a threat to our city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Scott?
Thank you, Mayor Poe, members of the Audit Committee. Nathan Scott. So as you're aware, there's a proposal to transfer assets that are allegedly held by GRU, allegedly on GRU's balance sheet, the Bulaware Springs and associated improvements and buildings, to the City of Gainesville's Park Department. And again, if they're held on GRU's balance sheet, and GRU has its own separate independently audited financial statements, and as Mr. Pilarski astutely pointed out to the state auditor, that GRU's finance department and finances and credit ratings are separate from those of the city, it begs the question as to what is the balance sheet impact, specifically the dollar amount that GRU's balance sheet will be reduced, and the reduction to GRU's balance sheet associated with the proposed no-fee transfer of those assets from GRU to the Parks Department, specifically 30.3 acres of real property and the improvements on the tax parcel. The associated, it's tax-exempt property because it's municipal. However, the property has a 2021 assessed value of $506,547 as shown in the property appraiser's site. So again, if this property and improvements have been historically carried on GRU's balance sheet, it seems logical that GRU's balance sheet will be reduced somewhat as a result of transferring away utility-held assets to the city without fair market consideration. Now, GRU is heavily leveraged. The building says the utility owned by those it serve. Make no mistake, with a debt to capitalization ratio of 80%, it's owned by Wall Street bankers. It's not owned by us. There's very little equity left in GRU, unfortunately. It was once Florida's flagship municipal utility, but the city's drained it with excessive general fund transfer and debt downgrades and everything else. So the point there being is if we're taking something off GRU's balance sheet, no matter how small, if it's already distressed, I think we should have some insight into what that assets are being carried as, via the land, vis-a-vis the land and the improvements in the buildings, before we just unilaterally say you're going to go donate it on a no-fee transfer to the city. I wonder how the debt holders might view that. I mean, you're disposing of utility assets. And again, this is one of those things where it's separate. I know y'all want to talk about one city, but these details matter. And I think that should be discussed. I'm sure that will come of interest to Mr. Monk and the Audit Committee. But I don't think you can just go transfer something that has potentially $500,000 of value and just give it away and uphold your fiduciary duty to GRU customers. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have anybody on Zoom for general public comment? No? Okay. Thank you both for your comments. We will now move on to member comment. Any member comment?
Just wanted to thank our newest member, Mr. Harold Monk, for being here with us. Always appreciate people stepping up to serve, and this being the first time we've added a member to this committee. Looking forward to your continued service throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Our next meeting then will be March 7th, so we'll look forward to that, Madam Auditor. And with that, no further business before us. We stand adjourned.